Well, good morning. I'm now on my commute to work, which will be my normal time that I'll be doing these videos. And today I wanted to actually talk about something that became really apparent to me due to one of the last trips that we had. Actually, the only trip we've taken in the Chevy Bolt that's been further away than from Chicago to Milwaukee. For the Bolt, Chicago to Milwaukee can be done on a charge to and from pretty much any time of the year without having to stop to charge or anything like that. It's only about a 140-mile round trip in total. If you were to drive a little there or whatnot, it might be 160. So it's really well within the Bolt's ability to do that trip. So the other trip that we did was from Chicago to Columbus, Ohio, which ended up being closer to a 400-mile trip each way. So we did that in the winter-ish time. It was definitely colder outside, about in the high 30s, low 40s. And usually the Bolt should be fine with that. It shouldn't be much of an issue. The heat won't run much. And with two of us in the car, we find that with a little bit of sunlight and two people in the car, again, the car doesn't really need heat most of the time in that situation. Or you sometimes just have to turn it off because it just gets too hot in the car. You don't underestimate how strong the sun is when it comes to warming your car.
There's a speed camera ahead.
And it does a very, very, very good job of keeping the car warm. But what we never really fully experienced was a continued state of high-speed charging. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we had two major issues kind of going against us. One, there was no fast charger between Indianapolis and Columbus. Now that hike there is about 170 to 180 miles. Now, we started our trip in Chicago. We stopped in Lafayette, Indiana, and we charged from about 40% to 60%, right in kind of that sweet spot on a Electrify America 150 kilowatt charger. So we reached the peak 54, 55 kilowatt charge speed of the Bolt. But by the time we got to Indianapolis, we did have to stop again, and we stopped there, and we stopped at a charge point fast charger, which is a 50 kilowatt charger. Now, I'm not complaining about the quality of ChargePoint's charger. In fact, I much prefer ChargePoint as far as the actual plug itself for the DC fast charging, the overall interaction with the unit, the length of the cord, the app, all that stuff Electrify America completely misses, which makes it extremely annoying really to use their system at all. But because it was 50 kilowatt, the most we could peak out at was right around 44 to 46 kilowatts. I know some people say, oh, it should only be like 44. Well, right around there. So by the time we got there, we were down at around 20-ish%, which is about 60 miles going from 60 to 20. It's about where we were at. And the charge took much longer. We had to stay there a long time because, again, the next leg of our trip was almost 190 miles. So we had to stay there a relatively long time, almost 80 minutes, to get up to about 90%. Now, that's also not that bad, but what became readily apparent to me was that if we had been on a faster charger like an Electrify America, that probably would have been cut down by about 15 minutes, would be my rough estimate, my rough guess. So at the end of the day, we left there and we got to Columbus at that 91% charge with about 4% left, with the reduced propulsion power coming into play just as we were pulling into a Chevy dealership to DC fast charge there. And we were there for about 20 minutes, got about 8 kilowatts-ish, and then we were able to leave and do all the rest of our driving the rest of the evening. And then we were able to charge at a local hotel overnight that evening, and everything worked out great. We had a full charge the following day. But the one thing you may say, 91% drive 190 miles, we were only going 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. We had a minor headwind going to Columbus, probably in the 20 mile an hour ballpark, but also one thing that doesn't show up anywhere really. I know supposedly Teslas do take this into consideration, was elevation change. Now, usually most EVs are not affected by elevation change. Obviously the Bolt is no different than any other, shouldn't really be affected, but the continuously ongoing rolling hills will eventually net losses at some point. So with that and a headwind at about 20 miles an hour, it made it where we had to slow down substantially getting into the city just to make sure that we had enough to get there. So enter the following day, the headwind reverses and we're going to come back from Columbus to Chicago. The headwind now is gusting up to 60 miles an hour with a sustained around 40 miles an hour. Now this is kind of unheard of. It apparently has only happened 5 times in the past 70 years without thunderstorms. So we quickly found out that even with the full charge and us stopping off in Dayton to see the U.S. Air Force Museum there for 3 hours and getting about 14 kilowatts, that we were going to have to slow down substantially to make it back to that charge point charger in Indianapolis. We ended up having to slow down to 55 miles an hour, and we made it there with 1.6% battery life according to the app that we have. We have the ODB2 connector, and the app was telling us 1.6%. That was cutting it close. It was very stressful making that, and we had to slow down and slow down and slow down. It was not a whole lot of fun, to be honest with you. But what's obvious there is they're going to be installing a fast charger in Dayton, which we could have stopped at for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we would have basically gotten there. It would have saved us all that time in transit time. We would have been able to run the heat too. But this is without running any heat, just seat warmers and steering wheel. That's it. No running heat. Now the sun was helping us for part of that leg, but still. So we charged up there to about 80%. We left. We went to Lafayette. We had to charge again because from Lafayette back to Chicago is about 150 miles. So we stopped there. We charged for about 30 minutes, and we got up to about 70% charge again. We kept going, and we got to another charge. We had to stop an additional time because there the wind gusts were almost perpetually, every other 2 seconds was hitting a gust of 60 miles an hour. And that you can definitely tell. You can see in the kilowatt usage, we were easily doubling our kilowatt usage when it was gusting. So we were seeing going 65 miles an hour. We were seeing upwards of 35 kilowatts being used, up to 40 kilowatts being used when it was gusting. It would come back down to about 20 and then gust, and it would go back up to about 38. And that was very rough. We made it there with about 10% worth of charge. We stopped. We charged for about 15-20 minutes, got back up to about 30%, 40%, and we took off, and we got home and finished our trip. Now, it wasn't a great experience, but I could see very quickly where if all the chargers were as fast as the Bolt could charge, it could have easily saved us 30 minutes, 40 minutes on our trip, if not more. It would have made things less stressful by having the additional fast charger in Dayton, which basically would have reduced our travel time probably by, I don't know, an hour, I would guess, at the end of the day, with the driving speed and speed of charge and everything else like that. It would have saved us a substantial amount of time. So that's really the biggest thing. I mean, all these complaints about, oh, the faster charging car, this is faster. Well, as I agree with News Coolum, with Eric on his channel, that right now the infrastructure isn't even there to fully support the Bolt's maximum charging rate. And that's kind of disappointing because really we're going to almost overstep the Bolt at some point. And the Bolt's actually going to be plenty good if you can sustain its maximum charge rate at a reasonable price. I do not find Electrify America to be reasonable or cheap for that matter. I think that that's something that's got to change. We need to be billed by the kilowatt at a reasonable rate, not be charged this insane 30 cents, 40 cents a minute rate that currently you're being billed with the EVgo's, and definitely not the $1 start charging fee. This seems a bit excessive. But anyway, I don't think that everyone's all about the charging right now. With Tesla being, oh, we got 250 kilowatts. I just read this one that apparently they only have one 250 kilowatt version 3 charger even live. Apparently the Audi e-tron is able to charge faster because it can sustain that 150 kilowatt charge rate almost to 71%, which is amazing. So I don't know, what do you guys think about the charging rates and charging speeds? What would you like to see? A better sustained charge, a slower charge, a higher peak charge? Are we all just playing numbers here? Let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. please, if you can, smash the subscribe button, the like button, and don't forget to click on that notification bell to keep yourself coming back here. I'm going to do videos Monday through Friday. And if you have any ideas for videos, please put it in the comments. I'll try to get to it and talk about it. Again, I appreciate all your guys' support. My name is Darren Orange, and I'll see you in the future.